Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is Patrick Cooke, and well, he's been a past guest on my show, and I've called in his show several times, or a few times, but, you know, we've always had something interesting to say, and matter of fact, I think me, him, and Shenanigan had us a little three-way round table going one time that proved pretty interesting, so I think you guys are going to enjoy the show today. The overall topic I used for the title was The Destiny of Man, which is one of Patrick's newer books, I think. However, we're probably not just going to stick to that single topic, and I don't think we're really going to start on that topic. But Patrick, he's a theologian, a paranormal talk show host, an author. He even works in videos. He's been on the History Channel and a few other documentaries. So you've probably even seen him around, in fact. So, Patrick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Royce. It's good to talk to you again.
Oh, it's good to talk to you again. It's always a pleasure to get together.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add is that probably in the next couple of weeks, I will be recording episodes for the Ancient Alien series.
So you, Giorgio Tucalos and Eric Von Daniken is coming out with yet another series?
Is he? Good.
Well, that's what I'm asking you, because you said you was going to be on that.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to be on at least, they told me I'll be on at least two series, or two episodes. And basically what it amounts to, might as well go ahead and explain why they got in touch with me. Because, you know, over the years, and ever since the early or the late 1800s, there's been a change in the view of the way mankind has viewed these strange things that come from the sky, the unidentified flying objects, and commonly known as UFOs. And ever since The War of the Worlds was published by H.G. Wells back in the 1880s, and the canals, quote-unquote, was discovered on Mars, there's been a basic shift into believing that there's a possible alien presence out there that is a threat to humanity. And, of course, if you watch the Ancient Alien series, you will notice that there's a lot of speculation about that particular subject. What are they here for? Are they going to hurt us? Blah, 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 blah. And, of course, being on so many talk shows and things like that, when I was on Coast to Coast with George Norrie, we sat down and had a very interesting agreement. And that was that any society that is so advanced enough to be able to travel the stars and get to our planet, if that's what they're doing, would probably have sufficiently advanced enough to get beyond the concept of malevolence, of evil. And suddenly, you know, I mean, we are learning here on this planet that greed and, pardon me, I still have a cough here.
It's okay, I understand.
That greed and not caring for your fellow man and everything like that is not the way to go. We're learning it slowly but surely, especially we're seeing in this election, where greed is on one side and helping the masses is on the other. And the greedy side is slowly but surely beginning to realize that it's not working for them. So basically, what the History Channel has decided with the Ancient Alien series is that they need to soften the tone a little bit. And that tone is that if these things have been around here for thousands of years, and of course, my website, the Bible UFO Connection, is the most extensive website in the world that covers the ancient presence of these beings in our world. And we've got it all the way back to, well, practically the ancient Egyptians. Some say it goes back to 35,000 BC. We don't know. Huh?
And further back, and you've, I don't know if you've interviewed Michael Tellinger on your show yet or not, but I have, and he's made a find of, like an ancient civilization, 250,000 years old, And he said in it, it looked like these extraterrestrials are working side by side with ancient man.
Exactly. And we see that in the Ica stones from Mesoamerica. We see it in cave paintings, petroglyphs that are dated as thousands and thousands of years old. We can't really determine the age of these things. But, unfortunately, the Christian concept that the world was created 6,000 years ago from whatever, in 4004 BC, from which they date the leaving of the Garden of Eden by Adam, and then chronologically set it forward. We know that around the world there are societies that constantly register 12,000, 13,000, 14,000 years old. As a matter of fact, when Herodotus went to the Great Pyramid, he found a cult of, not a cult, and I don't want to use that, I use that word too often, a priesthood that was protecting the pyramid and had been for thousands of years. And he wanted to know how long they had been there. So the chief priest, who was speaking to him at the time, said, you know, we've never calculated it. That's unusual if somebody asks us that question because we don't really involve ourselves with that kind of time. But they did have a statuary there, and every single time a high priest was appointed to that position, a statue was built for him. And they had all the statues of all the priests preceding him in the statuary. So they went, and sure enough, the very last statue that was in line was the man who was standing before him. And so they counted the reigns back, and they went back to 11,000 BC, which dates the world according to them, and every single one, there was a priest there and a date and a time when he was put into place. So that alone dates it back to 13,000 years ago. And then he asked them, he said, well, what happened? Where were the priests before that? And they said, we didn't need priests. The gods were here. So what you're saying is exactly what this high priest did, that Herodotus, a famous historian, actually was able to verify on his travels to Egypt.
Now, and some of the gods, though, they were kings before the priest kings were. And didn't Herodotus also record that on a king's list, or is that Manetho I'm thinking of?
He recorded all kinds of things, and of course he was very speculative. He also tried to claim that the Great Pyramid was built over a period of 20 years by 100,000 men under the reign of Khufu, or Cheops, as some people call it. But, of course, statistically and logically, we know good and well
that couldn't have happened.
Huh?
Statistically and logically, that couldn't have happened. There's just way too much that went wrong with that.
Oh, yeah, well, it's the most truly aligned building in the world. It's the most fantastic, the largest structure in the world. I believe that it was built by, quote-unquote, those gods. Now, you know, the only difference between myself and Eric von Daniken, and I'm always compared to him, because we're on the same line, except we're traveling different roads. And as I told George Norrie, that when he asked me how I felt about Eric von Daniken's work, I told him very simply, this man has broken the ground that I now walk on. And that's what it amounts to. Now, he believes that the aliens were mistaken for gods. My belief is just a little bit different. I believe that the gods, quote unquote, have been mistaken for aliens. But that all depends on your view of what God is. God to most people is this strange, ethereal being that blah, 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 blah. Well, in the Bible, and I'm a theologian, and considered a non-traditional biblical scholar, an autonomous theologian, I do not have the weight of dogma hanging around my neck and dragging me into the doctrinal morass that is what we now call mainstream religion. And my belief is very simply that these gods are, according to what the Bible says, a superior race of beings that lives in the universe and is served much like in the Star Wars epic that we know so well, the the God in that sense is the force. The Federation, which is a group of alien beings, or what we call alien beings, all in a federation, all joined together, all serving that force. That's what I believe the two distinctions are in the Bible. It very clearly states that there are the Elohim, the gods. Elohim is a plural word. In the beginning, the God created the heavens. God created the heavens and the earth is a plural word. So the Bible is polytheistic, not monotheistic, as most mainstream religions would have you believe.
Well, that's another interesting topic too, Patrick, because there was no monotheism until how many 6,000-7,000 years into recorded history.
Well, actually, no. The Hebrew word is the Elohim is a Hebrew word, and it is plural. If you add IYM to the end of any word in the Hebrew language, it is the equivalent of adding an S to any word in the English language, which makes it plural. And the very first time in Genesis, when God is mentioned, it is plural, and it is mentioned 31,000 times. and I believe in but it's definitely a plural word. The Hebrews believed in a multiple gods.
Right.
Jesus,
that's my whole point.
Hebrew.
Monotheism didn't come around until Akhenaten and Moses, and they were the beginners of it.
It didn't come around until Constantine.
Actually, I've heard that it was, now I might have got my research mixed up. You might have went more in depth than me, but I was under the impression that it started way back in the days of Akhenaten, and some people thought Moses and Akhenaten were one and the same, and that when he couldn't make monotheism work in Egypt, he come to the Israelites and try to start it with them. But you're telling me that no, it didn't start till Constantine, which was even after the days of Jesus. So I'd like to hear this new trend that I haven't heard before, because it could be you're absolutely right, and what we're looking at is a back recorded a history that was more or less made up for the most part.
The Christian religion will do anything in their power to reinforce their beliefs. And here's one of the things, Royce, and this is very important for people to understand. And I'm going to state this as a scholar, as a biblical scholar, as a published author, with articles all over the world, published in thousands and thousands of places. And I do have a certain credibility in this field, and I'm going to say this quite literally, that what we've got is a very, very, very strange view of the world.
Oh, I can believe that.
Because of the fact that Christian religion has had so much influence on our reality. And here's a very interesting thing. Now let me, one of the things, and this will give you an example, a perfect example of what I'm talking about here. And this is very, very important for people to understand. I'm changing the subject slightly, but I want to talk about giants.
Before you do, Pat, there's one thing I want to go over, and please pardon my interruption, but I was going to mention the fact that, you're right about what Christianity was saying and doing, and it is possible that in the Old Testament what they did was they rewrote the Old Testament to make it monotheistic, and, said that Moses was the first one in line, or the first recorder of it, to bolster their religion. It could have been a backtrack. Am I very far off from that?
No, actually, what you have to understand. Well, let me explain what you're saying here. First off, the Bible did not exist until Eusebius, which was a Roman historian, under the tutelage of not only Constantine but his mother Helena, was commissioned to collect the first Bible, B-I-B-L-E, Biblios. And that Bible was the first time any of these books had ever been collected into one form. He put together 81 books. People don't realize that. The first Bible that was ever written was 81 books. That included all the books that we know that are in the Bible now, plus 15 books of the Apocrypha. He translated all of that from 4 languages: Hebrew, Chaldee, Greek and Hebrew and Chaldee in the Old Testament, Greek and Aramaic in the New Testament, and translated that into Latin. Now that was the existing Bible, and every single Bible after that was translated from those Bibles. King James took that Latin translation and translated it into Old English. Now you will notice that thee, thou, and thy, and all that flowery language only appears in two things that you can remember in your life. That is the Bible and the works of William Shakespeare. It is such an obscure language, and they had to cram.
You mentioned that.
Yeah. And then they crammed all of those languages. They crammed all the Latin, everything into the Old English. Now, what happened was, getting back to, and then of course, now we have to understand that King James he had a purpose for translating this Bible. He wanted to assert the divine right of kings. In other words, King Henry had broken away from the church, and King James wanted to affirm his right as a God king by asserting the divine right of kings. And in order to do that, he had to make changes in the Bible. And he used the Bishop of London, who was in charge of the 54 translators that did the work over a period of 4 years. And he specifically commanded them in certain doctrinal issues that the belief of the Church of England had. So one of those was monotheism. So instead of putting the word gods in there, when you say they rewrote, they didn't rewrite anything, Royce. What they did, we have the original text. We know what the Hebrews have had these for thousands of years. We have the original text, and they are correct in their original language. But they changed it to satisfy certain doctrinal beliefs, which one of them was monotheism. So that word, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, in the original Hebrew, it was in the beginning, the gods. And they just simply took the S off. It's that simple. They took the IYM off. But what's interesting is I use a book called Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. And James Strong, now remember I told you it took 4 years for the Bible to be translated by 54 men. Never got paid, by the way, and only 47 of them finished it. On my website, I actually have the Episcopal Dedicatory, which nobody has ever seen, and an introduction by these men into that particular writing. Now, in the 1880s, a man by the name of James Strong, a very influential theologian, was able to gather together 100 of the top linguists, historians, and anthropologists of the ancient world, and especially the area that we know as the lands of the Bible. That area around Palestine, Jerusalem, and in Egypt, and in that given area. And he worked for 35 years retranslating, going back to the original text, finding the original text in the original Hebrew, and finding out what those words actually meant. He put that book together, and it is a massive work called Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, but you can find it anywhere. It's on Amazon. It's everywhere. During that time, they collected a massive amount of information and put together an encyclopedia of all the information that they had gathered to publish this one work. I have that encyclopedia. It's a very rare find, and I have it. And I told you all this to tell you this when I was talking about giants. Now, to show you how our perception of things have changed. This is the 1880s, right? 1880, 1980, that's only 130 years ago, Royce. 130 years ago, James Strong states very clearly that people in this world believed not only very clearly that giants had been on this earth and were roaming this earth, but that human beings, now get this is according to James, to this encyclopedia, and I've got a little bit to back it up from there, that mankind actually descended from a giant race. And that was a belief less than 130 years ago. And about that time, an Indian strode into Wild Bill Cody's Great Western Rodeo show. And he had a giant bone with him, a giant femur. And Wild Bill Cody asked him, where the hell did you get that? And he said, oh, we've got them all over the reservation. He said, this is from a race of giants. And he said, according to our stories, these are our ancestors. So you can see how belief changes so incredibly differently from just 100 or so years that we have a completely different perception of what people did 100 years ago. So it is not unusual that we have a strange perception of the way things are now.
Now, my question to that is, why isn't the human race is no longer a race of giants?
Well, it's very interesting. Something could have happened. We have a story. The only explanation, and this is one of the reasons why I'm going to be on the History Channel, is because I have explanations. When people ask questions, I can give them answers. According to Enoch, who is very much beloved by God, his book is quoted in the King James Bible.
In Jude, amongst other places.
Yes, you know about Jude. Very good. And it said he was so loved by God that God just took him. Just up and took him. And the book of Enoch, which I have on my website, the Bible UFO Connection, can be found under the Lost Books of the Bible. And Enoch states this, that there was a race of watchers on this planet that was guarding this planet. And I believe that, as you stated, when man and gods were living together, when Teotihuacan was populated not only by humans, but by these strange beings, and this giant race of beings called the Grigori came down and decided, for some reason, that they found women very fair. And they mated with these women, and the result was a hybrid race of giants that populated the earth, ate their parents out of house and home, went out into the woods, and ate everything in the woods, and then came back and tried to eat their parents, who were able somehow to fend them off, and then began to eat each other. And then, and this is according to Enoch, then the earth cried out, the angels, the other angels, the good angels came down, found out what was going on, and God flooded the planet to kill off that race of giants. And believe it or not, he goes one step further by stating that the spirits of the giants that died were immortal and could not be killed and became what we now know as demons. And it's very clear, if you look at the whole perspective, very clear that that's a possibility. So there's an explanation of why that happened. And we believe, there's a possibility that people may have been taller. We know they lived longer. Of course, you go into the Bible and you look at the chronologies prior to the flood, and it says that people were living, Methuselah lived 900 and some odd years. Now, God, just before he flooded the planet, he said, my spirit shall not always be here, shall not always strive with you. And this is a point at which I believe Teotihuacan, Machu Picchu, all of the great sites around the world, the Giza Plateau, all of these places were abandoned, and the gods left because he said, we're going to leave. And because we're leaving, your age will decrease to 120 years. And we see, we see chronologically that the ages happen, and now here we are, living to 80, 90, possibly, some people do live up to 120 years old, and it's very rare that happens, but it does happen. Now, here's an interesting perspective. Are you familiar with the pterodactyl?
Yes.
Do you know that pterodactyls cannot fly in this atmosphere?
No, I did not.
Yes, they're too heavy. Their body weight is too heavy. They cannot fly. But if there was more water in the air, if we had what is commonly known as a double atmosphere, they could. And also, how did that flood occur? Is there a possibility that there was a double atmosphere on this planet prior to the flood? And when I say, and I'm not talking religiously here, I'm talking about 438 Noahs around the world that all say there was a great flood. This is empirical evidence.
Right.
This is not some religious belief. And many, many, many other cultures speak of a great flood that happened. Not just the Bible. This is not some kind of creationism thing. This is reality. The flood, as some massive flood, actually did happen. And what if the atmosphere collapsed, and that's what these beings, the Elohim, collapsed the atmosphere, caused it to flood, and that's where all that water came from. I mean, where did they get all that water? Well, there's a possibility that it happened. And here's another interesting perspective. Do you know what the number one killer of human beings is on the planet? The number one killer.
Not exactly sure. They talk a lot about cancer.
Well, how about the thing that gives us life?
The air.
The sun.
The sun.
Radiation from the sun. If you are in a protected double enclosed environment, science tells you that you will live much longer. So perhaps the collapsing of that environment not only caused men to live shorter years. Now this is all, and when I say something like this, I don't try to tell you this is what I believe. This is an interesting theory that has been put together and people have come across with. So there's a possibility that we live less years because we're no longer living in a double atmosphere, because that protects us from the sun.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because I had a working theory going that the atmosphere was somehow related to gravity, partially because other planets spin that have much lighter gravity than we do, and I've always felt that the spinning of the planet had some effect on gravity, but I kind of figured it had to be enclosed somehow to kind of like create suction. And if you had two atmospheres instead of one, that can make a big difference in the gravity factor, in other words. And with less gravity, you don't work as hard, you live longer, so you're looking at a chain effect is what I'm driving at.
Very good point. Very good point, Rush.
So, I think what you're talking about, it may sound off base or like a far stretch to some, but a lot of things that sounded like a far stretch ended up being right on the money, too.
Exactly. Truth is...
okay, I apologize.
Is stranger than truth.
Huh?
Hello?
I'm here. Go ahead. What was you saying?
Fiction is stranger than truth.
That is true.
And the whole concept that we have, we were taught a lot of things, and we learn over the years. We learn up one side and back down the other that the truth is not what we think it is. So you have to basically. This is what I've dedicated my life to doing, is finding out. First off, I questioned everything I'd ever been taught, and found out that something like 80 to 90% of it was complete bull. And then I sat down for 25 years and learned what was the truth, or what appeared to be the truth. And that's what I put out. And being raised to be a Baptist minister, and being rejected by the church because I bothered to do what the Bible says. It says, prove all things. And that's what I tried to do.
And when you do it, they tell you you're wrong and you're written wrong. You're getting information from demons, and you're going astray. And we can go. I was raised by a Pentecostal preacher. I can go down the whole line you was told.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. Question truth and question authority. You have to question in this world, and that's the important thing. If you don't, you're never going to learn the truth. And what I say. Don't take what I say as the truth either. get that encyclopedia. It's available on Amazon. Strong Encyclopedia. Excuse me. Having a
real quick, Patrick, let me inform the listeners, since they're not aware of this, that my guest today, Patrick, is, and I hope you don't mind me putting this out on the air. You did it on your show, but he has got cancer, and he can't really help the coughing. So, folks, do bear with him. Also, if y'all want to learn more about Patrick, you can go to his website at www.bibleufo.com, and in all honesty, that's only one of his websites. He's got probably more than what you'd remember if I told you on the air. He's got the Bible UFO, the Doctrines of Men, the Lost Books, the Oracle Publishing Company, the Cave Lore, the Oracle Research Institute, and the Matrix Radio. So they're all listed in the show description, and you can get all of them from there with no problem at all, and it'd probably be a lot easier than trying to remember it. Also, before I forget, you can call in and ask questions at 832-632-7904. I may not be able to answer the phone right away. I try not to interrupt my guests, but I'll go back up as soon as I can, and if call notes picks up, just hang up and try again. Anyway, go ahead, Patrick. I'm sorry for that. Patrick, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I was about to say, go ahead. I'm sorry about that interruption, but I thought we ought to get that put out there.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I'm not at all shy about being honest about the fact that I have been diagnosed with the worst stage of angioedema, which is a lung disease. But I also, being a researcher as I am, and having lost several good friends to cancer, I am not going the traditional route insofar as healing. What I am doing is trying what we have been dealing with for thousands of years. Everybody has cancer. Most people don't know that. Everybody has at least 7,000 cancer cells in their body. The only problem is when you screw up and you don't take care of yourself, it becomes a danger and becomes detectable. And that's exactly what happened to me. I screwed up. I let myself go. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't taking my vitamins like I've been doing for decades. I wasn't taking care of the things around me. So I ended up with this. Now, amazingly, I am getting better. When this first started, I could not have done a radio show. I was coughing constantly. I was feeling terrible. I lost an incredible amount of weight, and generally I was just in horrible shape. And had I continued on that route, I thought I was just, not feeling good. Had I continued on that route, I'd probably be dead by now. And my oncologist, the chief of the team that's working with me, and I have the finest insurance in the world to do this. I'm actually going to be seen at Sloan Kettering on the 2nd of October. You can't get any better than that for the cancer in the cancer field. And my oncologist has written me off. He says that I've got 2 to 3 months to live, and that's it. And you take a look at me, and quite literally what you'd think, and is exactly what I tell people, the way I want them to look at me, think of me as having an allergy. Because, I am strong. I did a 4-mile walk with my dog yesterday. I have a beautiful German Shepherd puppy. I'm riding a bicycle. I'm exercising. I'm eating well. And I swear, Royce, I am 63 years old, and I have never felt better. The only problem I've got is a cough. And I will bet you a dime to a dollar I'm going to survive this. And I've got a team of nutritionists and chiropractors and acupuncturists and all kinds of people that are working with me who firmly believe that I can beat this disease. And all you have to do is you just have to first change your body. Cancer can't live the cancer can only live in an acid-high environment. You change your environment within your body, and the cancer can't live. The cancer can't multiply. It can't grow. And one of the things that people don't know is cancer is an insidious disease. What it has, you take a normal blood cell. A normal blood cell has a coating on it. The coating on a cancer cell is 17 times thicker than the coating on a natural blood cell, which means that the white blood cells can't get in and attack this demon, this racking your body. So what you have to do is you have to break down the walls on the outside of of that. And then once you do that, and you do that by enzymes, which I'm taking enzyme therapy, and then you start attacking it with all kinds of herbs and supplements and things like that. And I think what is happening, like I say, for me to be able to talk as long as I just did, just that moment, Royce, is phenomenal. And my wife will tell you that I look 10 times better than I did. I'm feeling so much better. I may drop dead during this interview, but I guarantee you I'll drop dead with a smile on my face. I am in very, very good shape. And I want to encourage everybody out there that if you are stricken with cancer, do not accept for 100 years, science, the medical science profession has had a rate of 97% failure insofar as saving people from cancer. And even if they do everything they can, you are still going to die from cancer because the three methods that they use are draconian. First, radiation, which causes cancer. Second, chemotherapy, which breaks down the immune system, which allows cancer to grow. And second, surgery, which is a known way of spreading cancer cells. And that's all they ever used, and that's all they've used for over 100 years.
Well, why would they do that if it did these things? Is it because they want you to die, or?
Two words for you. Big Pharma. It costs an average of $6,000 a month to keep somebody on chemo. Just the drugs alone. $6,000, an individual drug. The average is $6,000 for an individual drug. They're making money hand over fist, Royce. And if they cure it, they won't make that money. Look at the hospitals all over the world. Look at the National Cancer Institute. Look at all these incredible things that have grown up around this disease.
So it really boils down to one word, money.
People? It's money, buddy. That's it. It's greed. It always has been, and it always will be. And I'm taking the route less traveled, and it's working. I mean, I feel just great. So
you're gonna
now that we've got that out,
the enzymes and stuff that you're taking on your website for the benefit of other people?
I'm fixing to do a whole series of stuff to point out to people, and I will refer to that shortly. Right now, we have and to show you how you can live while this is going on October the 6th, my wife and I are doing a fair right here. We have organized a fair with 30 vendors and all kinds of interesting things to do, and we're working on that very heavily right now. And of course, I'm preparing for the History Channel interview, which is coming up shortly. So as soon as the air clears, probably around the first of the year, I will start putting this stuff up. And it'll be very interesting for people to see. For anybody who wants to know, right now what my protocol is Laetrile, which is basically, you can't buy Laetrile. It's illegal in this country because it works. I eat apricot seed, which is it contains vitamin B17. It's only illegal if you take it out of the apricot seed. I eat almonds, bitter almonds. I eat 15 bitter almonds every day. I employ the use of an ancient Ojibwe remedy called Essiac tea. And that seems to be really helping. Graviola is another interesting thing that I'm using. The Celiac Budwig protocol. Now, all this stuff will be online eventually. But that's C-E-L-L-E-C-T, Budwig, B-D-U-P-U-D-W-I-G. Graviola is G-R-A-V-I-O-L-A. Apricot seeds. And then I'm trying other ancient Amazonian. You see, when you find a society that is cancer-free, and you find that these people have been eating a certain thing, you take that thing away from them, and as soon as you do, they start getting cancer, then you know that thing worked. So those are the things I'm trying. My diet I've completely changed my diet. I was a big Dr. Pepper drinker. I no longer drink refined sugar. I no longer eat white flour. I no longer the big vibe like hot dogs and French fries and all that stuff is gone. It's out of my life. And I'm feeling better, and my wife is having to eat dinner with me. She doesn't have to eat lunch or breakfast with me, but she has to eat dinner with me, and she's feeling better just because she's eating dinner with me. I'm avoiding beef, which is a heavy processed meats and things like that. This all causes an environment through which cancer can thrive. So you starve the cancer, and it'll eventually go away. And then once you do that, first off, you change the environment that the cancer is growing in. The cancer will begin to slow down. Then you attack it by thinning out the walls. And cyanide actually is what's in laetrile, is what's in the apricot seeds, and that cyanide will get into those cells and kill it. And it won't kill healthy cells. And of course, you're boosting your immune system with your diet and things like that, and that means the white blood cells will increase. Now, what's interesting is that the drugs that they use, Royce, were developed, believe it or not, from the end of World War II. Mustard gas.
Oh, God.
A lot of them have mustard gas. They have the same basic formula as mustard gas. And the reasoning behind this, now I want you to think about this. They noticed that guys who were exposed to mustard gas had their white blood cell count was down to 5% of what it was in a normal human being. And they reasoned that, well, if we kill those cells, with white blood cells are fast-growing cells, so are cancer cells, they're fast-growing cells, so we'll just kill off all the white cells, and we'll just kill off all the cancer cells with something that's the equivalent of mustard gas, and then what they don't realize they're doing is they're killing the patients. The cure, and it's generally believed by most people who have studied this over the years, that it is not the disease that kills people, it is the cure.
The disease is just making people uncomfortable, making them cough, and, making them generally sick, but who knows how long they could go on with it.
Right. So this 97% failure rate has got to stop. And I don't think we're going to be able to do it in our lifetime, but eventually it's going to happen. And now they're moving into genetics, which is really scary. Trying to say that genetically they can tell you whether you're going to have cancer or not, and that's weird. So anyway, enough about cancer. Let's get on to a more pleasant subject, or at least a more interesting subject.
Okay.
Where do you want to go?
Well, you said earlier you wanted to talk about the fall first, but that's not where we started. Now would be a good time to start.
Well, fall occurred at 10:49 a.m. Eastern Time here in the United States. So it's it's actually not as old for you as it is for me.
Oh, so we're already
when I pointed out. Huh?
So we're already into fall.
Oh, yeah, we're in the fall. 3 hours and some odd. Actually, almost 4 hours. And you and I were talking about climate change. It snowed in Wisconsin last night and stuck. Harbor Point, Wisconsin. Stuck. Now, that's weird. Last year, on October the 31st, we got 17 inches of snow. It destroyed millions and millions of trees in this area and crippled the entire state of Connecticut. People lost power for days and days and days, and because of that, and ironically, we had a fire here at our house. Our kitchen was destroyed, and I had to remodel it. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it was a direct result of that freeze. And it's absolutely amazing that now it snowed in October. Well, it is, crying out loud, give me a break.
Yeah, we're looking at a colder winter, all right.
This is the 22nd of September. And it's snowing.
Yeah, the heat wave don't normally break until September 15th, and I think it broke really toward the end of August.
Yes, we've had the hottest years, the hottest seasons ever in this country historically. It's unbelievable how long.
Could be the end of global warming, or at least the line of it.
Yeah, well, see, what we don't realize is that ever since the Industrial Revolution that started back in the 1600s, when the first coal-powered steam engine lifted coal up out of the mines in Ireland, we've been pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And a lot of people are arguing that it's not man-made cause, that it's cyclical. But I guarantee you we've never seen anything like this. And now they're talking about the possibility that by 2020, now get this, Royce, the Arctic could be ice-free. The North Pole could be free of ice. We had the lowest, the thinnest ice sheet ever this year. And they're saying, and they had predicted that. The ICCP, the International Climate Control Commission for the United Nations, said that it wasn't supposed to happen until 2050. But yet it's happening 30 years, they claim it might happen 30 years earlier. We have a devastating drought affecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 60% of the United States right now. I don't know what it's like up in your area. Now, we have no problem with water here. We're actually on a well system. We've got a pond, beautiful, huge pond right outside our back door. And we're not having any water problems here, and everything is pretty well lush and green. But the rest of the country is suffering a terrible drought. And a lot of people don't realize, like the Dust Bowl. People don't understand. Did you understand how the Dust Bowl happened, Royce?
No.
Well, that was in the Oklahoma territories, in the Oklahoma area, around the midsection of the United States. And what happened was that there was a particularly heavy rain season for years and years and years. And a lot of farmers got in there, and it developed a very thin level of topsoil. And they were able to get in there and farm, and then, instead of going all the way to California like everybody's doing, people would stop in the Midwest and farm there. And then, God help us, the rain stopped. And suddenly all that topsoil dried up and blew away. Now what you've got is desert areas, and people don't even understand how that happened. But that's the same thing that's happening. You see, we have moved into the worst possible areas we could have moved into. The people of the world now, climate population experts say that the United States, that this globe could handle 35 million people if they were evenly distributed. Unfortunately, they're not. Most of the people in the world, like 90% of the people in the world, 90 to 95%, live within 30 degrees of the equator. And not only is it concentrated there, they are concentrated on the coasts of that region. So my wife and I drove across the country about 3 years ago, and it's unbelievable the amount of arable land out there that is not being considered for use. Because everybody wants to be on the coast, everybody wants to be in the big cities, and agriculture here in the United States, at the turn of the century, at the turn of the from the 19th into the 20th century in 1900, 75% of all the people in this country were employed in agriculture. Now it's less than 3%. So we have certainly changed our habits. And because of that, now we live in a global world, but we're chewing up all the resources. We have 5% of the population of the world. We're consuming 25% of the goods in this country. And more that's happening. We're going to run out. We are using the way it's classified is we're using 3 planets worth of natural resources, and we've only got 1. So we're just chewing it up as fast as we can, and it doesn't have a chance to completely rejuvenate itself. And there lies the problem. We're at a tipping point now. We're close. We're not over the level, but we've got to be careful about what we're doing. And unfortunately, we're doing exactly the opposite.
Well, there are some people saying that we've gone beyond the point of no return.
Well, I'd rather be optimistic than skeptical. And there seem to be some, the Earth can, you see these apocalyptic movies where the Earth completely rejuvenates itself. The vines growing all over New York City and the Statue of Liberty and all that stuff. I believe the planet can heal itself if given a chance. But if there are these beings out there and they say that they're going to come in and help us, that's what the That's what all the gods said. Horus, Krishna, Jesus, they all said they're going to come back and cover our butts. So maybe they'll help us out.
Quetzalcoatl.
Certainly, if they terraform this planet, they can certainly fix it.
Well, yeah, you would definitely think so.
Yeah, and that's the only hope we've got at this point, because we're certainly not headed in the right direction.
Well, you know, we're not far behind those guys as far as terraforming goes. I've been seeing shows on TV that, you know, they've already been coming up with new ways to try to terraform, say, like Mars, for example. We're just now catching up to an old technology.
Well, now that's a pipe dream. I want to put a stop to that right there.
It's a pipe dream by what, NASA?
No, well, I want the pipe dream about Mars. Now, I was privileged to know the comptroller at Caltech, which is in control of the Jet Propulsion Laboratories back in the late 70s. And I got to go in and listen to the very first description that was given of the first analysis that was ever done on the atmosphere of Mars. And you remember ivory soap?
Yeah.
Okay. When ivory soap was first invented, these guys came out and they had a 50-word technical description of exactly what it did, what was so big about ivory soap. And the reporters said, hey, can you put that into layman's language? And they huddled and they got together and they said, well, it floats. and ivory soap does float. Well, the same thing happened at JPL. They came out with a 14-page description of what the atmosphere on Mars was like. And so they came out with this long description. They started reading it, and the people stopped them. And I was there when it happened. And the people stopped them and said, wait, we can't understand any of this stuff. Can you give us in layman's language what it's like, what the atmosphere on Mars is like? And so they huddled, they got together, and actually went out of the room. And then came back and sat down, and the guy said, okay, we've come up with a conclusion. Living on Mars for a human being or any organic substance would be the equivalent of trying to live in a pot of boiling bleach. The Martian atmosphere is completely hostile to any organic life as we know it. Terraforming Mars would be an absolute impossibility. And also, I want to point this out, Royce, and here's what's very important. People don't know this, but I do, and NASA knows it, and everybody else knows it. It cost $250,000 to lift a single pound of weight off the surface of this planet. Where the hell are we going to get the money? We can't even pay our own bills. Come on. They're not going to terraform Mars. This is the last frontier, Royce. We have got to make it here. We can't. You see, this is the equivalent of a teenager messing up his room and dad going out and building another room so he can mess that one up. That's not going to work. We can't go. You know, the concept of leaving this planet, this is it, buddy. We're stuck here. And people have to face that reality. That's why we've got to stop, quote unquote, shitting in our own nest, to pardon the expression. I know that's a no-no word in the media, but that's exactly what we're doing.
Well, if our extraterrestrial gods felt that way, we would have never been visited.
Well, it's amazing they do. I know, I know Stanton Friedman. I've interviewed him. I'm sure you have too.
Oh yeah.
Stanton Friedman says, you know, this is probably a tourist attraction to show you how not to do things, because we certainly do we certainly do not know how to do it right. There's no question about that.
I would tend to agree with that as well. But are you really absolutely sure that your source hadn't been misled and that maybe he was just fed information that wasn't accurate about Mars?
No. This is still, you know, now let me explain something. Here's an interesting story. Okay. In 1963, well, actually in 1949, the year I was born, they began to realize that they were running out of one of the most important elements on this planet. And it's chromium. bumpers, chrome.
Right.
And it is a absolute essential in the industrial world. There is no known replacement for chromium. It has to be used in manufacturing. Something in the neighborhood of 35 to 40% of all manufacturing and things that are made in this country and around the world rely on chromium. In 1963, Peru had the largest vein of chromium. And in 1949, they began to realize that it was running out, and in 1963, it became dangerously low. There was, at that point, only one other source for chromium in the world. And you'll never guess where that was.
No, I probably wouldn't.
Indochina. Specifically French Indochina. Specifically Vietnam. Suddenly we've got a war going on in Vietnam. And we lost that war, but the mining companies were able to get that chromium. And it's a very small deposit. It will not last us more than 30 to 40 years. But there's another source of chromium that we know of. And you'll never guess where that is.
Probably not. I would say off planet, maybe.
Mars.
I was just wondering.
So why are we going to Mars? Why are we talking about spending all this money going to Mars? And why have we lost 75% of the things that are going up there? It's unbelievable. They want the chromium. I believe that's definitely what it is. I think it has to do with mining, and I think that's what those rovers are up there doing, looking for it, confirming. And I think what they will do is eventually try to send a mining crew up there. But see, it's easier. Mars is. Do you know how big Mars? You know how to describe how big Mars is compared to the Earth?
No, my impression was it was a lot smaller, isn't it?
If you took the entire landmass of the Earth, which is only 1/4 of the Earth's surface, if you take the entire landmass of Earth, which is only 1/4, 75% of our landmass is covered by oceans. If you take that landmass is the equivalent of the entire surface of Mars. Mars is 1/4 the size of Earth. So the gravity is very low. Now, it'd be easy to get the stuff off of there, but getting the stuff up there to mine it would be incredibly expensive. So I believe that's what Mars is all about. And when I say I'd like to debunk the concept that we're going to live up there, I mean it. Because they have no intention to live up there. They couldn't. It's completely hostile. You'd have to terraform the entire planet. And do something like you see in Star Trek, where they have this terraforming device or something, and that's not real. We have to deal with reality here.
So I would take it then, unless I misunderstand you, that you probably would disagree with Richard Hoagland about the face on Mars and the pyramids of Sidonia?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I do believe that there's a possibility that Mars was, in fact, populated at one time. But something serious happened. There was a war. There was something that destroyed everything up there and changed it. But yes, no, I'm quite familiar with the anomalies on Mars, and I agree 100% that there was possibly a thriving population there. And I also believe that the moon, especially the dark side of the moon, it holds some secrets that NASA's been hiding from us for years. So no, I agree 100%. I do believe that there's ancient stories about great battles. And ask yourself this question: what are all them rocks out there called the asteroid belts?
Well, I've heard many different theories on that asteroid belt. I mean, there's a guy that has that Watchers Net website I'm pretty sure you're familiar with, and then there's what Sitchin said. There's many different theories about that there asteroid belt. But I'd like to hear yours. Is it different from some of the others?
There's some ancient stories about a great battle that happened between the evils and the good forces in our direct solar system. and that there was a planet there called Ratha at one time, and that planet was destroyed. And what we see, that asteroid belt that we see, is what is stretched out around, that's possibly the remainder of an entire planet.
Now, you're getting this from ancient texts?
Yes. It's not Mesopotamian. It's not Akkadian. And I don't believe that even if they could be I don't believe Zecharia Sitchin was able to translate those things. I'm very much a Sitchin skeptic and detractor.
I'm not so sure I would agree with you. I mean, I'm not going to say he translated everything, quote unquote, but from my way of thinking, the man must have had the ability. He grew up out there, and it was, part of his everyday language.
What was?
As far as I know, the Hebrew and Sumerian was part of the language he grew up with.
Oh, that's a bunch of poppycock. Sumerian is the most difficult language in the world ever discovered. Zecharia Sitchin was born in Israel. He had English as a second language. That's it. He wasn't a linguist. He didn't have any language. Do you know what CV is? Commonalities?
Oh, what?
Commonalities, CV.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
If you have degrees, like my wife has master's degrees up to yin yang and all kinds of stuff, and her commonalities details what her educational background is. Zecharia Sitchin had a CV, commonalities, which detailed his background. Now, this is the truth, and anybody can find this online. It's absolute truth. This is not a lie. This is not a speculation. Zecharia Sitchin had one degree to his name, and that was a degree in economics from the University of London. And he had one job, and that was as an economic writer for a London newspaper. Now, how the hell did he learn the Akkadian? How did he learn the Sumerian language, which Sumerian scholars will tell you is almost impossible to understand?
Now, that part I was aware of, what you just mentioned about the what his college training was. I knew he didn't, according to any records online, have any training in Sumerian on that. What I was going by was the fact that he grew up in Israel, and, you'd think being okay, granted, there's Sumerian's much
Israel
older than Hebrew, but
Israel is Samaria, and it comes from the Babylonian culture. You're talking about Iraq. Iraq was the center of that.
Yeah, but many of the people from Israel come out of Iraq during the days of Abraham, right?
Yeah, people from Israel came from all over the world. Israel was not even formed until 1948. So you can't say.
Well, that's officially, according to biblically, it was Jesus was in. Well, that was Jerusalem, which I always thought Jerusalem and Israel was the same thing.
Judea is only an area of 40 miles square around Jerusalem. What you were talking about when you're talking about Palestine used to be called Jordan. And that's not Mesopotamian. That's not Akkadian. That's not Babylonian. It's Iraq, Syria, Assyria, those lands. And no, Zecharia Sitchin had no training, had no exposure, as far as we know, to the Sumerian language, and he stated very clearly that he didn't know what all the fuss was about, because he felt like he had a personal understanding with the quote-unquote Anomalies, which the Sumerian scholar, and I had a conference call with these guys on the air, on a radio show, a conference call, because I was really pissed because everybody was questioning whether my beliefs and Zecharia Sitchin's beliefs were the same, and they are completely in opposition. God rest his soul. He's not with us, and I hate to speak evil of the dead, but things need to be cleared up. Zecharia Sitchin was no Sumerian scholar, and although he wrote tons and tons of books, Zecharia Sitchin was grandfathered in. When he first came out, he was considered to be a buffoon, and still is by some. You've got to understand that when you're talking about linguistics, Royce, you're talking about a science. You're talking about a science, an applied science, a true science. Sumerian, and in a true science, your only credibility, the only credibility you have is with your peer reviews. And his peer reviews are horrifying. They say that he doesn't even understand the difference between Akkadian and Sumerian, which is like saying you don't understand the difference between English and Spanish. They're completely different languages, yet he mixes them together. So just look him up. If you go to my website, you'll see on the front page I have a number. I have it very clearly that he was, I've got a whole thing on him, and another thing, the Raelians were putting my website all over their websites because
I got definite questions about the Raelians. I think that's a big scam thing myself.
Yes, same thing to me. It's no different than Zecharia Sitchin. Zecharia Sitchin wrote a lot of books, but he was grandfathered in. I don't think the man has any credibility in the field that he claimed that he did. Yet a whole cult has grown, and now that's a cult. You hear Planet X everywhere. It's even snuck into the 2012 prophecy, if you can believe that. That I found really rich.
Now, trying to think, Eric Von Daniken, he was around doing the Chariots of the Gods and researching this long before Sitchin come around, but he never once focused on the language, did he?
Not particularly. Because here's the thing, Rose, we don't understand these ancient languages. You know, you may be able to go to a website and get your name translated into Egyptian, but we don't know that. I mean, to tell you the truth, it's a farce. Linguistically, we know jack about this stuff. These languages are so complicated. You remember the Wind Talkers?
The Wind Talkers?
The Navajos. The ones
yeah.
during World War II.
Right.
The way it was described to me, one of the Sumerian scholars that I spoke to stated to me, and I lived on my grandmother was a school teacher on the Navajo reservation in northern Arizona, and I actually know two things in Navajo, but don't understand the language at all. They consider the language so difficult that the Germans couldn't even crack the code. They had a Navajo on either end of the radio, and they could talk back and forth all day long, and the Germans couldn't figure out what the hell they were saying. I heard from a Sumerian scholar that Sumerian was to Navajo what Navajo is to English in our reality. They don't know squat about it. They've got a few of the words down, but nothing anywhere near like Zecharia Sitchin claims he did. And the scholars, they said, okay, well, we've questioned him. We tried to get this man to give us information and say, where did you get this? Where are the writings that you got? And he claims that they were in the University of Baghdad. In the museum at Baghdad. Not Baghdad, excuse me. In Iraq, the University of Iraq. The main museum in Iraq. Now that's gone. I don't know whether they've recollected any of the ancient Sumerian writings that were looted from that museum. It's by my reckoning, and I defy anybody to show me. I want to see the documents. Give me those documents that Zecharia Sitchin translated from. Show them to me. I want to see them. And I've told people that over and over again. Show it to me. Show me in his biography, in his bibliography, where they are. They're not there. Where is that stuff that he translated it from? He's pulling this stuff out of the air and claims so. And I heard him say it, that he believes he had a special relationship with the Anunnaki. And then to think that there's a concept of a planet entering our solar system every, 30,000, 3,000, I don't know, I don't remember what he says. That would knock every planet completely out of alignment, and we wouldn't even have a solar system if that were the case. And he claims it's going to happen again. And of course, like I say, it's even snuck its way into the 2012 prophecies, which is absolutely ridiculous. So, anyway, there's my rant about Zecharia Sitchin.
Okay, so what's your next rant?
Well, I don't know. Where do you want it to go?
Okay,
well, to go? I can rant all day.
Why don't we talk about the destinies of man? I think we've really, in a sense, have kind of been covering it off and on, but you got a book out on it, right?
No, not yet.
Oh, not yet, but
I'm doing a series of documentaries on it.
That's where I got that from. Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, and the money is tight right now, so we're having a very hard time getting that off the ground, but basically it's a really simple process. Let's talk about the destiny of mankind according to the world's religions. And of course, Christianity is the one we know the best. You've got a choice. You've got, basically, it's incentive or fear motivation. Incentive motivation, you do everything that the church tells you to do. You're going to go to heaven, to a divine retirement home, and sit around in the mansion all day and play golf or football or whatever it is you like.
Or is that a divine oak folks home?
That's your reward. And if you don't, you will be condemned to an eternal torture in the most horrifying fire, the most horrifying torture with demons poking you with, or jabbing or stabbing you with pitchforks. You'll be turned upside down in a bucket of excrement. And this will go on forever and ever, the most horrible torture, a torture so impossible to fathom that the human mind cannot even comprehend it. But wait, remember, God loves you, and God is taking care of you.
You just sounded exactly like George Carlin.
What the hell is this? So that's what Christianity promises you, either or. Okay? That's all you got. You don't have anything else.
Right.
But if you read what the Bible says, let's talk about it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He created the cattle and the fish and the birds and the seas and the plants and everything else. And on the sixth day, what did he do?
Rested.
No, that was the seventh day.
You're right, it was. Where'd I get rested?
On the sixth day, he created man.
Yeah, my brain
How
went...
did he create him? He created man in his image and after his likeness, or our likeness. He's talking to the actual phrases. Let's create man in our image and after our likeness. Why did he do that? So and that was one of the things that got me kicked out of the ministry, was because I questioned, because if it says in the Bible, God created man to look like him or it, doesn't that mean that it looks like man? Isn't that logical?
Yep.
So I said, you can know what God looks like. And sure enough, we see Moses seeing God, and it talks about him having a back and a head. And we see, and I don't know whether you're familiar with it. Are you familiar with that Jesus was the God of the Old Testament?
Yes and no.
John 1:1.
There's a lot of, yes, I'm familiar with John 1:1.
The Gospel of John makes it so clear. It couldn't be more clear if I hit you over the head with a 2x4.
There's a
it says it very clear that
about that Jesus, God, man, or Christ's anointing.
It says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh, and the flesh dwelt amongst us. And John the Baptist talked about him, and he brought us salvation. There's no question Jesus was the God of the Old Testament. So he became a man, and then he was, according to the Bible, crucified and resurrected after 3 days, stayed 40 days on the planet, and then was taken up into a cloud out of their sight. And then John on the island of Patmos, some 60 years later, saw him again and described him as having a head, hair, arms, eyes, a voice, and feet, and a chest. So this is a very real being. And he said that he looked like man and man looked like him. And then, what happened? What got Adam kicked out of that garden after he was created? He ate of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And what was God's comment about that? And he said, and I'm paraphrasing this, but just open your Bible and look in the 6th chapter, or look in the 2nd chapter, because that happened after the creation of man. Adam was created after man was created. Believe it or not, I'll explain that. But that's...
Oh, no, you're right. Man was created in the 1st chapter, Adam in the 2nd.
Right. Adam in the 2nd in the Garden of Eden.
There's like 2 creations, one and 2. And a lot of pastors don't like to accept that.
Of course they don't. But that dates it, that means that man has been around longer than Adam. Adam was not the first man. I do not believe he was the first man. Or the second, for that matter. But what happened? He ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and this is what God said. He said, lo, or oh, look, he has become like one of us. And let's get him out of here before he eats of the tree of life and lives forever. This God is saying that we have the same knowledge as he does, because Adam ate of that tree, and that passed on genetically, apparently through the through the human race. What is going on there? And then we have Jesus, after he became and read the first chapter of the Gospel of John. Just read it. Read it in context. Read it as good as you can, and you will see beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jesus was the God of the Old Testament, and he was confronted by the Jews, and they said, "Who are you? Who do you say you are?" And he said, "Well, who do you say I am?" And they said, "Well, they say you're the Messiah." And he said, "Well, I can tell you this: I and my Father are one." And they said, "Well, that's blasphemy." And they picked up stones to stone him. They were going to kill him. And he said, "Many good works have I done in your presence. I've healed thousands of people. I've fed people everywhere. For which of these good works are you going to stone me?" And he said, "Not for good works, but because you blaspheme and equate yourself with God." I'm paraphrasing here. But you paraphrase and you equate yourself with God. And he said, and he is saying this directly, and you can tear this apart any way you want to. It's exactly what he said. He said, "Is it not written in your law or in the books that you read, is it not written that I have said," I, meaning I, the God of the Old Testament, has said, "You are gods." And he is quoting Psalms where it says, "You are God's children of the Most High." And you can break that down any way you want to, but you've got Jesus Christ himself saying that you are gods to humans. And he said it to humans back then, and he said it to humans now. You are gods. Now, what does the concept of being the brethren of Christ mean? The brethren of the Christ, the brethren of Jesus? Being adopted into a family?
Right.
Becoming a brother of Christ. If you're a brother of Jesus, and Jesus was the God of the Old Testament, what does that make you? A God.
Exactly.
In other words, there's the destiny that the church is hiding. The church is hiding the destiny that God has promised. What is the good news? What is the gospel? What is this gospel of salvation? The gospel is that we are destined to become higher beings. Now, however we get there, a lot of people have some very strange ideas about how we get there, but we get there eventually, and that's what it is. And I believe, personally, according to what I've read, and you know, let's be clear here. I'm talking Bible, but all of these things are in the other ancient writings. The common thread that runs through everything is the golden rule. Jesus and Horus, if I read you the history of Horus, the son of the sun god Ra, you'd swear I was talking about Jesus. Krishna, all of them, they all say the same thing. I do not believe that the world is populated by a bunch of religions with all these strange gods. If you look at them, and especially if you're an autonomous theologian and a comparative theologian as I am, you don't look at the differences. And they're very hard to find. The differences between religions are very hard to find. And most of it's poppycock, like the virgins, you know, like the virgins of, you know, you're going to get 1,000 virgins or whatever if you become a martyr. Most of that's poppycock and doesn't even exist. But
Patrick?
if you look at this, yes.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were going to continue.
But if you look at these, what I believe is that it is not that they're talking about many different gods. I believe what it is many different cultures that dress differently, wear their hair differently, eat different things, live in different environments, speak different languages, are taught different morals, different concepts, different realities, all describing the same God, all describing the same family of gods, which is what I believe this is. And the family of heaven is actually described in the Bible. That actually appears that there's a family in heaven, and I believe what it is a family. And if you look at it, think about this. You've got a father and a son. Is that not a family? What, we don't accept single parents anymore? That's definitely a family right there. So there's a family, and that proves, the father and the son, that proves that the Bible is monotheistic, is polytheistic right there. So anyway, that's what I basically believe, is that basically they have that we're not talking about different gods. We're just talking about different descriptions of the same God. And they all say the same thing that I just told you, that man's destiny is to be and the concept of heaven and hell didn't even exist to Jesus that we have now. That's purely a Christian, which Jesus was not, a Christian concept. Heaven and hell were the same place to the Hebrews, to the Jews.
Yeah, as I heard it, there was a place called Sheol, but it wasn't like what the Christians described. But, I had a question for you. Because, I've heard before about Jesus being the God of the Old Testament. And I heard what you said about John 1:1, which I'm familiar with that passage. In the beginning was the Word was God, and the Word was with God. And many even say that the Word really meant the Logos. So I got all of that down. But since we're talking about God being like us, like you and me, a flesh and blood man, how could Jesus have been the God of the Old Testament in a flesh and blood form before he was born?
In a flesh and blood form?
Yeah.
You never said flesh and blood.
Exactly what I was thinking.
What you're talking
about, though, that originally, before Adam, we were all spirits, and so was, there was God, which was a spirit, which would have been over the extraterrestrial gods, or have I misunderstood that through the years?
Well, there's all kinds of ways to look at it. Unfortunately, we don't have the empirical evidence to know. But it's an interesting speculation. It's much more interesting than just to eliminate the concept altogether, which is basically what the mainstream religions do. They so focus you in. See, I believe that the human race is a symphony, Royce, and all voices must be heard. Everything, we're never going to get it right until everybody gets the voice. Everybody speaks. It's like Horton hears the who. People are never going to hear until that very last little who down there yells at the top of his lungs. And we have to combine all that to learn what the truth is. So there's so much speculation out there about the way it goes. But yes, we don't know. Who knows? Maybe he is flesh and blood. Maybe there is blood flowing through his veins. We know he has a voice, but his voice sounds like many waters. It's different. That hair I described is that he describes in the book of the Revelation that John describes. He has white hair, whiter than just unbelievable. He has glowing yellow eyes, and he has red skin.
Well, it's been my understanding that there are some passages in the Bible that will make descriptions of God as a man, yet at the same time, I think it was John himself who said, no man has seen God at any time, which tells you right there's got to be a misunderstanding going on or a contradiction going on.
Would you repeat that, Royce?
Well, just to give an example, you're talking about in the Old Testament, Moses described God's hand, the back of his head, etc. Right. Abraham met him as a man at his house.
God put him behind a rock.
Oh, well, put him behind
God put his hand over him.
But he still described body parts is what I'm saying.
Right.
Okay, but yet in the New Testament, John says no man has seen God at any time. Would that not include
God the Father?
Part?
God the Father.
Right, exactly.
See,
that's the part we haven't touched on yet.
Yes.
That I was trying to steer you toward was God the Father and the difference between God the Father and the extraterrestrial gods.
Well, God the Father and God the Son are two different entities. That's very specific. The concept of a Holy Ghost or an entity is strictly a tradition. It is not doctrinal. It can't be found in the Bible. There are verses in the Bible that the translators completely corrupted in 1604. But there's no empirical proof that the Holy Spirit exists. But the word God appears throughout the Bible, so there's definitely a number of gods. And for some reason I just lost my train of thought.
I hate it when that happens.
But the God the Father, all we know about God the Father is that he seems to be the source of all life. And that life is in a human being is generally believed by science to be concentrated in what we call the mitochondria. You heard that phrase used in Star Wars?
Right.
When Luke Skywalker, the mitochondria is strong with this boy. That is what I believe. I believe that this entity called Pater, he's called El in the Old Testament. He's called Pater, or Father, in the New Testament, and I believe that he is the source of all life. That seems to be and that's what all the world's religions seem to generally believe, that there is a source of all life. And I'm not sure that he can be seen. I'm not sure that our eyes can see him. He is protected by very, very high levels. You have to go through one level after another level, up to the seventh heaven. He may not even be in the seventh heaven. And I do know that according to Hebrew writings and Hebrew beliefs, that he does have a throne. And I believe that according to the book of Revelation, it talks about a city, a great city, descending out of the sky and landing on the planet Earth. And this is called the throne of God. It's called the new city of Jerusalem. And a lot of people, what happens after the 1,000-year, Jesus comes back. He takes over the planet, holds it here for 1,000 years, which is why I can't understand why people wanted to be in heaven. If they want to be with Jesus, they might as well stick here because that's where he says he's going to be. And he's going to rule the nation for 1,000 years. Do you know what happens after that? What happens after the 1,000 years, Russ? You ever thought about that?
Well, actually, I've heard people argue that there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, and other people say, no, heaven's going to come to earth.
Well, it says this great city comes down. And you can read about it. It's very simple. John actually measured the city.
Yes, in Revelation it says the great city's going to come down, but in Peter, the earth will be destroyed by fire.
Well, no, it doesn't say anything about the earth being destroyed by fire. That's a bunch of poppycock.
I could have sworn I read that in Peter myself.
Huh?
I could have sworn I read that in Peter myself.
Gotta find it. The only mention of fire is when the false prophet and the beast are thrown into the lake of fire. Not humans, by the way. Not any other humans, but just those guys are thrown into the lake of fire. That's the only there's no mention of the earth being destroyed by fire. What it does say is that Jesus will turn the planet over to his Father. And that's the coming of the Father when that great city lets down on this planet. Now, he measured that city, and this is what's interesting. The earth is going to have to get a lot bigger, or it's going to look like it's got a real big bump on it, because that city was 12,000 furlongs. It measured the equal distance in the length and the width and the height. So it has to be one of two types of structures. There's only two structures in the world that can equal the length, width, and height together. One of them is a cube. What is the other one, Royce?
I'm not exactly sure.
A pyramid.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard something about the heights of pyramids.
Yes, they can be equal.
I hadn't heard that, but...
So I believe basically what it is. Now, a furlong is a stadia in the Roman language. It's called a stadia in the Roman language.
Okay, I found it.
Yeah.
Peter 3:7. But the heavens and the earth, which are now, by the same word, kept in store, reserved, unto fire against the day of judgment and the perdition of ungodly men.
Well, I don't know how that says it's going to be destroyed by fire.
Well, it's kept in the store, reserved unto fire. And let's see, looking for and hastening unto the coming day of God, wherein as the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Well, then, if it wasn't destroyed by fire, if I misread that next verse I read made it sound an awful lot like it wouldn't have a heaven.
Well, heaven means sky. The word heaven in the Bible does not mean a place.
Well, it can mean sky, or it could mean like another dimension as well.
Well, now wait. Remember, I'm a biblical scholar. The word heaven appears 730 times in the Bible. In the Old Testament, it comes from the word shamayim in the Hebrew. That word means the sky, the place where the clouds are, the place where the stars are. In the New Testament, it comes from the word shamayin. It's exactly the same word with an N at the end instead of an M, and that's Aramaic. And that means the place where the clouds are. That's the way it does never, ever, ever mean ever. And you can, and I've checked every single 730 times it appears, because I was shocked, because I thought, just as other people did, that it meant another dimension or a place of divine right time. No, it doesn't exist, Royce. It is, and that's absolutely provable.
Because Paul also speaks of a third heaven.
Speaks of a third heaven. Yes.
So what does that mean?
A third dimension. The third heaven, we know that that word, and surprisingly enough, it appears in when Paul is talking about a man he knew a few years ago who had an out-of-body experience and was taken up to the third heaven. But that word heaven, here you go, that word heaven is not properly translated. It comes from the same word that the Garden of Eden comes from. It comes from a word that means park, P-A-R-K, and it doesn't mean a dimension. He believes, according to him, he was taken to paradise, called it paradise, and he actually calls it paradise later. So, the word heaven is very clearly misunderstood by the mainstream church and everybody else. And that was the whole thing. See, that's how I got into this work, Royce, was that simple word. My interest was in the Great Pyramid, and my first published work was the Giza Oracle, the Great Pyramid at Giza. In Isaiah 19:19, it talks about a great monument that was built in the center of Egypt at the border thereof. And one thing led to another, and I suddenly realized that what it was talking about was quite possibly the Great Pyramid. So I did an extensive study of that. It was my first major research project on anything architecturally, and it's now part of my website. It's part of I observed it right into the website.
Go ahead.
Hold on, just a second.
All right.
Just a second. I actually have a quick communication that another talk show host hadn't heard from me for a while. He was concerned if I was all right. But I told him I was on your radio show, so he wouldn't be concerned.
That probably mystified him unless he knows who I am.
Oh, well, you're pretty well known, Betty. Anyway, where were we? I got a little bit sidetracked there.
Okay, we were talking about heaven and the meaning of heaven.
Yeah, but, if it says Jesus is going to be here on this planet, and by the way, Royce, I want you to complete this statement. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit.
Now, there's two passages in those Beatitudes. One of them is, blessed are the meek, they shall inherit either the heaven or the earth. And then there's the other one that says that if it ain't the heaven, it's the earth, or vice versa. So I know it's going to be either heaven or earth, right?
It's earth. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And I believe this is it. This is where it's all happening. Why would it not? I mean, all this occurred here. Look at all the things around us. I mean, doesn't it tell you that there was something very, very pivotal?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Whenever I read Peter 3:7, even now, it sounds to me like reserved unto fire means that, judgment, God plans to destroy it by fire. And in fact, I hear a lot of preachers preach it. That doesn't mean I'm right. That doesn't mean they're right. But it means the way it's worded, it sure is easy to take it that way is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, the fire in the sky has been a very famous thing going on. You should read the writings of Pilate, the governor, who supposedly condemned Jesus to death. He didn't condemn him to death. He tried to save him. His wife was actually a disciple. And he talks about the fires in the sky that came down the night that Jesus was crucified. That's fascinating. There was an earthquake in Jerusalem that lasted for 12 hours. Imagine that.
Okay, I got it. It was blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are
Kingdom of heaven. Okay, kingdom.
No, you were right. That was the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. So you got two inheritance. If you're poor in spirit, you get the kingdom of heaven. If you're meek, you get to inherit the earth. But Jesus did also say in Luke and also almost every gospel that the kingdom of heaven is around you and inside of you.
No.
That's what I read.
Okay. Now, when that was said, they said, where is this kingdom you're talking about? And he said, the kingdom is within you. If you look into any concordance, Strong's, Young's, any of the concordances that you can find, and you look at the definition of that word, it can also mean among you. If Jesus is the king, couldn't he be among them? The kingdom is not within you. How can you have a kingdom? The kingdom is not a place. The kingdom is a realm. It's a rulership. It is not a place. It is a rulership, and that can be argued easily with any concordance. So I can dispute that. You can't prove it in court. I'll tell you that. I guarantee you. But I
was about to say, I'm looking at the concordance in my eSword online Bible, and it says that's G 1787 where it's being used here, and it says inside, adverb or noun, within, and that's in Strong's Hebrew and Greek dictionaries.
Well, let me get mine. Let me get my Strong's and see what Strong's the accepted authority. Within.
Well, this said Strong's Hebrew and Greek.
Well, I've actually got to one. I do not use the sword thing. I found it to be very, very, very slanted. So let me just look this up real quick. I'm to Willard. So, without, what verse is that?
Let me open my Bible back up. I folded it. Luke 17:21.
$17.37. And boy, does this bring back old memories. I've got computer programs to do this right now. I just don't have it hooked up on the computer that I'm at right here. But this is actually more reliable, actually going to the book itself. Anyway, keep talking.
I'm sorry. I was trying to look and see where there was other ones, because you realize that when you look it up inside the, at least this program that I have, there are at least 10 to 15 different meanings for the word within, or for the term within. So, that's why what I like about using a concordance where it's got the Strong's right by the verse, it's kind of like pointing out this is what we mean in this particular verse, in other words. I don't know if any of these would actually say among, and I can't figure out why they would use the word within when they already had to use the word among in the Bible before.
Well, I get the word invest.
What word is that?
I actually have a Strong's dictionary as well. Let me look it up in the dictionary and see what they claim it is.
Wasn't the Strong's Concordance and Strong's Dictionary the same thing?
No, there's a separate dictionary that goes with it. You can get that online. It's very interesting. As a matter of fact, Royce, if you'll send me an email with your address, I will send you the encyclopedia. I would be glad to do that if you'd like to have that.
Okay.
Yeah, send me an email with your address.
Then what are you going to do for the encyclopedia?
Huh?
What are you going to do for the encyclopedia?
What am I going to do with it?
Well, I mean, you would be without one if you did that, wouldn't you?
No. I've got a copy of it.
Oh, okay.
It's, what it is, it's in PDF form. It's all pictures of the pages, but it's still quite readable.
So what I could do is probably just send you my email address, couldn't I?
No, I'd have to send you I'd have to send you 1.36 gigabytes of PDFs. It's a big one. It's a 10,000 page encyclopedia. You hear a kitty crying in the background? Oh, wow.
Now, you said yours says a vest?
I have many more. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, the one that is taken from in that particular verse in Luke 17:31, is that what you called it?
I think it was 17:21. Let me look and see again. Okay, yeah, it was 17:21. Neither shall they say, lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you.
It's among you. I believe it means among. But anyway.
Is that what your encyclopedia and concordance is saying now?
No, it actually says clothed. Let's see. But this, it's always interesting to be as accurate as you can.
Which is sometimes with these biblical terms very extremely hard to do, and I do understand that, by the way.
Yeah, it's 17:21. Comes from the Hebrew word 1737. 1737. I can probably try to pronounce it for you. And Deutero is the way it's pronounced in Hebrew. It's a form of 1746, which means in the sense of sinking into a garment, to invest, to clothe yourself. So it's not within. If anything, it would be without. So, but the kingdom, you see, if you'll go onto my website and you look for an article, it's a very extensive article called "The Incredible Gospel of Jesus." In my book, "The Doctrines of Men," that one chapter, which I believe is like 20 pages long, required 60 pages of bibliography to back up. And what it basically says is that you are the kingdom. That's the whole point. In other words, I believe every human being was born. Specifically, what I think is God is recreating himself over and over and over again in individual forms, which would be a very unique way to do it.
Well,
I don't believe this.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, but
go right ahead.
Listening to you right now, it sounds like you're saying the same thing that you and me really agree here, but what we're disagreeing on is semantics.
Yeah, it's all semantics.
We're agreeing on the same, the overall general principle, but the actual wording is, what we're really having a little differences with, in other words.
Right, but see, now we've discovered that. We've agreed to, sort of let it, we're both going in the same direction. And I believe that's the way all the world's people are. They're all going in the same direction. I don't believe in the inherent evil of mankind. I believe that mankind is basically good. I believe that you're a good person. I believe that I try to be a good person. I believe my wife's a good person. And I believe that most people, if given a chance, would be good if you just gave them. I mean, there was an interesting study. Probably the lowest scum that you can think of is drug dealers, right? In California, they did a survey. They went around to all the drug dealers that they had in prison, right? That had been convicted of dealing drugs, and they asked them. They said, what would it take to get you to stop drug dealing? And you know what they told them? They said, you give me a decent job where I can feed my family, have a car, have a place to live, keep a roof over my head and food to eat, and be happy and have decent recreation. You give me that, and I'll give up all this crap. This is the most dangerous profession in the world. I don't want to sell drugs. I don't want to constantly have people pointing guns at me. I don't want to constantly be suspicious that a cop's going to pull me over and I'm going to end up in prison. Basically, I do not believe that people are inherently evil. And we see that, Royce, from the very beginning of life. You take a baby will share anything with you. They'll play with you. They'll smile at you. They'll love you. They'll be, and so long as they're comfortable and not irritated, they're going to be just absolutely wonderful. They are hardwired to love and to care and to share and to give. The only thing that changes that is they condition that out of us and make us competitive and start this race we call childhood. It's not a race, it's a journey. It should be shared, it should be enjoyed, but that's what we do. And we find that in the world's professions, the people that are the happiest are those that are serving mankind, the first responders, the people in hospitals, even though I think hospitals are very dangerous places to be. I certainly believe that people are hardwired to love and to care and to share, and people are empathetic. When you see somebody that's hurt, only an extremely harshly conditioned individual would not try to help. So you see what I'm talking about here? We are basically, we are gods. We think like gods. And what do? We create our own little worlds. Not only every single house, not only every single state is different, every single city is different, every single house in that city is different, and probably every single room in that house is different. And every individual in that is creating their own world around it. I am saying words to you, Royce, but they are not my words now, because you have heard them and you have thought now they're your thoughts. You're creating your world as you go. And what does God do? Same thing.
Well, I've always thought that we had created our world as we went. But talking about what we're talking about, don't you think it'd be kind of interesting to go back in time and see what the crime was like back in the days of, say, Jesus or Elijah or someone like that versus how it's like today? Did they have drug issues, just a different kind of drugs, what have you? Is this something that's, you could look back in time and say, well, this is a turning point and this is where people started doing the things they're doing?
Well, yeah. It's really, it would be really interesting to see. I don't know. I would like to think that it would be less than we have now. But of course, greed, greed it started, according to the Bible, that's the first example. Let's say a Christian, where did it actually start? It started with, Cain's greed over the love of God. He thought that God favored Abel.
Well, that differs from what I thought. I thought it was Eve's lust.
Huh?
I thought it started with Eve's lust, and that greed was like a manifestation of lust.
Well, I don't know. You can look at it speculatively. Wherever it started, and now we're stuck with it. So as long as that's been around, as long as there's been somebody with more money than somebody else, there's been a problem. And that's why I don't think that money will play an important part in what we call a utopian environment or what will happen when Jesus. I don't think money will even be around. Money is the root of all evil, or the love of money. So you might as well eliminate it.
Yeah, I would say the love of money would probably be a little bit more closer to accurate. Right. But like you say, as long as there is money to people, money is a power stone. Right. If I can get elected into office, this money will keep me going for another 4 years. But what's happening is really corporate America is using money to give them power over the government.
Oh yeah.
They don't have to clock in like the president does. They just offer a donation. They get what they want.
Oh yeah. If you take the average representative and senator in the federal government, from the moment they step into their office, Royce, every single day, they have to rip $15,000 a day, or they will not be reelected. Think about that. That is the kind of, and we've got a lobby system that makes sure that in order to get that money, they have to do what the corporations want them to do.
Is that the lobbyist that Obama promised to kick out?
Yeah. What's wrong with that boy? Something's wrong with him. He should have done that. Well, he wasn't going to kick him out.
No, he's going to promise
it. Impossible. But we need to eliminate it. That's not one man, one vote. That's one corporation, thousands of votes.
Yeah, one of the worst things they could have done is made it legal for people to lobby using corporate campaign donations, because people learned to use that as a power hold, and now nobody up there in office wants to turn it down because they're greedy for power while the other people are greedy for money and power.
Now think about this, Royce. In 1972, 1971, I was working for a man who promised. I was in Fort Worth, Texas. He was a representative from a local district. He went into the state government. This was 1973, 1972. And when he got there, when he was elected, and he got there, and he said there were 18 people in my office, all lobbyists. And he refused to take any of their bribes, and the guy never got a bill out of Congress.
Oh, I'm not
surprised. Never was able to get anything done, and he wasn't reelected.
I'm not surprised. And, though, Patrick, if you stop and think about it, the people that get into office, don't you think they're really kind of trapped in a sense, because there's a vicious circle going on?
Well, why do we need them?
You got people lobbying in there wanting to offer you bribes. And some of the bribes they're offering is to the United States, but some of them directly to the pocket. If anything at all does go into the United States, the United States is how much into debt, and just coming out of a recession, do you turn it down and, continue on with the place in debt the way it is, or do you take it and then allow them more control? But see, the same party that's, doling out the campaign contributions is also part of the Federal Reserve, which is where money's getting put out with no value whatsoever, and it's like an economic game. And I'm probably not explaining that very well, but I think I know, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, do you know where the Federal Reserve came from?
It came from what I've been able to read and research online, and of course, everybody's got their theories, and any one of them may be right or wrong, but as I understand it, really originally started out with the Knights Templar, and it became the central banking system, and then out of that, the Federal Reserve.
No, I'm talking specifically the Federal Reserve as we know it today.
The one here in the United States.
Yes.
Now, I remember...
It was created in 1913.
Yeah, I was about to say, I remember reading that it was voted, but I'm trying to remember exactly who brought that in, because I remember Andrew was against
all the big bankers. All the big bankers. Just look up the word Jekyll, Jekyl, Island. You look that up online and you will find out.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to remember right there. Yes. There was a big meeting back in 1913 in a hotel on this island, and that is where everything started. It was actually
before that. It was actually before that, and they couldn't get it through. They had to wait till, I forget which president it was, got into office before they could get it through. And what else happened? There was an amendment that was passed in 1913 as well. Do you know what that amendment was?
No.
The 16th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Do you know what that established?
Mm-mm.
Income tax.
Oh, why didn't that surprise me?
And I'm going to tell you this, and you can prove it online. Just type in income tax, Federal Reserve. You'll find out what I'm saying is true. Not one dime, Royce, that you have ever paid or your father before him before 1913, not one dime of any of the tax money that's been taken out of your check if you were employed as a payroll employee. Not one dime of that has ever gone to build a road, to put a bullet in a police officer's gun, to repair a bridge, to buy a can of brass soda, shine up the brass on a school door. Not one dime of your income tax has ever gone for anything other than one thing, and that is to pay the debt that we owe to guess who? The Federal Reserve. All that money, we borrow money from the Federal Reserve according to the amount of income tax coming in. We will not borrow more or less. The bankers not only took the, and do you know when they took the money away from, took the money, when they got the right to create money, as you said, do you know where they took that from? From us. From the Congress of the United States, our representatives. They took that power away from them. And now not only do they create money, but they guarantee that we're going to pay them when they loan it to us. Now think about that. That's the biggest robbery you could ever imagine, and that's been going on for 100 years. And nobody even, and the only one, Ron Paul is the only one talking about getting rid of the Federal Reserve. Give the money back to Congress to create money.
Have you ever heard about the government in 1933, something about wartime or the Depression at the time or something of that nature, insisting everybody give up all their gold to the government? And I think it was supposed to be paid back, but it wasn't. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm familiar with something similar to that, but not sure. We actually went off the gold standard in 1968, March of 1968. So we've been out without a gold standard for that long.
Okay, Franklin.
By the way, I wanted to point out to you that since the Federal Reserve has been in office, the United States dollar has lost 96% of its value. Since the Federal Reserve has been in our society. The dollar's worth 4 cents what it was when the Federal Reserve first came into power.
Okay.
Yeah, it ripped us off completely.
Here's what I'm talking about. Franklin D. Roosevelt, under Presidential Executive Order number 6102, confiscated all privately held gold in the United States on April 5th, 1933. Now, it'd take us much time to go into that that we don't have right now. But from what I've been able to gather, they just took that gold and they just more or less kept it. And, that makes you wonder, why is it we're poor and they're rich? We do the work, we get the gold, it gets confiscated, and the people who are rich now have it.
Right. Well, the gap between the wealthy and the poor is unbelievable. Right now, I believe, well, I know for a fact that the amount of money that a CEO makes versus the people on the line, the people that are out there manufacturing the goods of the company that he controls, is 700 to 1. The wealth gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's not going to change as long as we allow them to have the power that they have. But see, here's the thing, Royce. You have to understand. Why do we, ask yourself this question, why do we have representative government? Why do we have representatives in the government? Why do we elect people to go to Washington for us? Why do we do that? What started that? How'd that begin?
Actually, if you ask me, and this is going to sound crazy, it's like a reliving of Samuel in the Bible where they wanted a king and God tried to warn them he would unfairly tax them and all of this other stuff. And they insisted on them anyway, and they got their king. We come over here, we're running from the Pope and the rulers of Europe, trying to get our own religion going. And what's the first thing we do? Just like they did in Samuel. We want a president. We want a leader. Why? Right. Same reason for Congress?
I'm not talking about the president. I'm talking about the Congress. I'm talking about the House of Representatives and the Senate. Why do we hire people Why do we hire people, elect them, and pay them to go to Washington to represent us? Why do we do that?
Well,
Because
I think that's mostly a illusion. I mean, I think they're letting us believe that we're giving us a choice.
No. I'm asking you the practical question. The practical question. The ins and outs of why did they hire people to go to Washington to represent them? It's real simple. Remember the old horse and buggy?
Yeah.
Well, it took sometimes 3 to 4 weeks to go from the farthest reaches of the colonies into Washington. So if you want to make a decision, how the hell are you going to spend 3 to 4 weeks? You have to go back. So it's like an 8-week round trip, right? So instead of doing that, what they did was they elected a person from amongst themselves, and they told him, okay, this is what we want you to do when you go to Washington. So you go to Washington, and you do this. And they did back then. But now, Royce, I'm talking to you directly right now. You where? Where are you? Royce?
Wait, what did you just say again?
Where are you located? Where are you?
Okay, I'm in Houston, Texas.
You're in Houston, Texas. You're over 1,000, 2,000, what? How many miles are you away from me, buddy?
Away from you?
Right.
Where are you located?
I'm in Connecticut.
Well, I'm probably at least 1,000 miles away from you.
Yeah, at least 1,000 miles away. But I'm talking to you right now, right as we sit. And now we have pretty good credit. But if I had great credit, I could go on my computer, which I'm looking at right here, and I could go online, and I could look for a yacht, and if I had a double gold American Express card, I could buy that yacht online securely. Within 15 minutes, I could own that yacht. And you know, hundreds, I could pay $200,000 for it and do it securely online. Now, if I can do that, why the hell can't I vote online? Why do I need a representative there? Why do I need some guy that's going to get bribed by a corporation to take my vote away? Why do I need that? I don't need that. And we could provide a computer terminal at every liquor store, every library, every city hall that was secure and tied into a secure network. And we know from the experience that we have now that voter fraud is virtually non-existent in this country. These new voter ID laws are absolutely incredibly stupid because they are a cure for a disease that does not exist. Voter fraud does not exist. We don't need these people. We don't need Senator so-and-so. We don't need Representative so-and-so. We can make our own damn decision, and we can have a council. We can all get together and hire a council to do nothing more than to pose these questions out, and we can submit the questions. We could tell them, you know, you and I could get together and say, okay, we'd like to do this sort of thing. Let's put this out before a vote. We could get it done. Why do we need these people? That would eliminate A, the lobby system, B, the electoral college, and C, the primary system, and you said the two-party system. It would eliminate parties altogether. I don't need a damn party to tell me what to do. I don't need a party to tell me that I need to believe this or believe that. I know exactly what I believe, and I know exactly what I want for this country. And I guarantee you, and once again, I'm saying I do not believe in the inherent evil of people. I believe that if we were allowed to make our decisions, we would make the right ones. We wouldn't be in Iraq. We wouldn't be in Afghanistan. We wouldn't be in all this big mess that we have. We wouldn't be bailing out banks. If the banks can't make it, they fail. Don't give me this crap too big to fail. That's not the way it is. See what I'm talking about here, Royce? We're talking logic.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of something else as well. What about the legal system? I mean, with no government, would you have a legal system, and what would that do for crime?
Of course, you'd have to have a legal system, but we would control that legal system. We would appoint the judges. We would hire them. Right? We wouldn't have people that are there for lives and can make decisions until they croak. Come on, give me a break. But yeah, we'd have to have some kind of judicial system. But listen, we're logical. We're intelligent human beings. Look at what we can do. If we can't figure out how to figure out a system where we can have a one-man, one-vote thing, we're not worth our salt.
Well, the way it stands, it doesn't matter anymore if you vote Democrat or Republic. You're going to get a bozo in the office, and he's going to be controlled from corporate America anyway, so who cares?
Yeah,
unless you bypass Congress, like you're saying.
Yeah, it's really sad that I and my wife. I don't know. I don't speak for my wife, but I believe she's somewhat in the same camp that I'm in. We have to vote for the lesser of two evils. Obama didn't do what he said he was going to do. And we certainly don't want Romney to do what he says he's going to do.
Have we had a president promise in the last 100 years?
Good point. That's what politicians do. They solve all the problems before they get into office and forget all about it when they do. You know.
Yeah, I think my son John would make an excellent politician because he makes a lot of promises he don't keep.
Yeah, but no, it's absolutely fascinating.
Well,
excuse me. But we're learning some very valuable lessons, Royce.
Patrick, I was going to mention, we've been going about 2 hours now, and you haven't had a break. Do you want to continue the show? I can't.
Sure, I'm fine.
I probably couldn't go more than another 26 minutes or so because I'm about to get pulled off of here by my wife for supper.
Okay, well, no, we can end it now. Certainly, this will not be the last time we will be talking. There's no question about it, and we certainly have covered a lot of ground.
But yeah, actually, I think we really have. And, you know, I'm always happy to talk to you anytime. I can disagree with you as quick as I could somebody else. But I'm just...
Well, okay, I'll tell you what, let's do.
I had to throw that out there just for funsy, Patrick.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do. Why don't we get together and you come on my show?
Yeah, I was just thinking about I've never been on your show other than to be somebody calling in.
Right, no, you should definitely be a guest. Well, let's see, I don't think this Friday is going to be good for me, but what about Friday next? Friday after, let's see, let me get my calendar up here and see if I can get a commitment on you. Well, actually...
Oh, that's Friday the 29th. I could probably do that.
That would be the 28th.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I'm looking at Saturday. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess you are sure.
I'll tell you what. Well, let's see. Why don't we talk about it? I'm not sure whether that's going to be a good day for me, but we'll talk and we'll just continue the conversation. We've only scratched the surface here, Royce, and it certainly is interesting speaking to you. And
well,
of course, and
go ahead.
My wife has told me she wants to eat dinner early too, so we can certainly do that. But if there's absolutely no end. You are very well informed. I'm quite impressed with your depth of knowledge, Royce.
Well, you've got some college going on that, and your theologian degree that kind of has me blitzed on that one. But you know, I've done quite a bit of reading on books and internet and watching documentaries. So I may not be as theologically sound as you are, but I'm not exactly totally ignorant either.
I've been doing this for 40 years. It's hard to. You know, but then again, who's to say I'm right? Who's to say how right I am? But the important thing is that at least we get to express our opinions. That's the key. And as long as we're all talking, see, that's the communication is the most important thing. As long as you're talking, as long as you're communicating, you're moving forward.
Well, yeah, because even if you disagree, as long as you communicate, that'll straighten itself out eventually.
Exactly. It all works out. It all comes out in the wash. Isn't that what we say? It all comes out.
That's an expression we use down here in Texas.
I'm from Fort Worth. You know that, don't you?
No, I didn't know that.
I was born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas.
Well, I was born and raised right here in Houston, Texas. Matter of fact,
I live in Houston.
I live
out in Sharpstown.
You do, or you did?
I did. I used to live out in Sharpstown. I understand it's no longer a big...
Well, it's not like it used to be. But anyway, I'm living 8 blocks away from the house I grew up in.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I wrote I can come on to your show. One thing I would want to tell you is don't put anything down for a Tuesday night or a Saturday afternoon because that's when I got my show. But pretty much slide almost any other time in.
Let's say tentative the 28th.
Okay, we'll put a tentative 28th, and you can email me and let me know if there's anything, wrong with the date. And I'm going to try to see if I got your email. I think I do. And I'm going to try to shoot you. If not, I'll shoot you my email through Blog Talk Radio at your show.
No, don't do it through Blog Talk.
Oh, don't?
No, you go onto my website.
The UFOs in the Bible?
Bible UFO Connection.
Right.
There's an email link on every page.
Okay. I'll shoot you an email through there, and I'll give you both my email address and my house address.
That would be great to have you on the show.
Okay.
Certainly something that we need to do.
Interesting.
It has been a fascinating 2 hours, and I swear I just looked at the clock. I didn't realize that it was that long. We have just been moving at a breakneck speed through the entire history of humanity. We need to slow down, go back and pick up some pieces that we left behind.
Well, you're right about one thing. We strayed topics. We didn't stay on one thing.
Definitely not. And that's what's so fascinating about two people that have broad knowledge in a lot of different areas, that you can cover so many different things.
And I agree with you.
Royce.
We didn't scratch the surface.
Yes, we didn't scratch the surface. We need to just keep this going. You're a fascinating person to talk to.
Well, you are too, Patrick. I really do enjoy having you on. And I'm going to let both of us go eat, though. You have a good weekend, and thanks for coming.
Yep. Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure as always, and we'll be talking to you real soon, Royce.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, folks. Now we're going to go ahead and do the usual wrap-up for the show. I wanted to remind you guys to come back Tuesday night. My guest is supposed to be John Myler, and the topic's going to be aliens and the Antichrist. And this is going to be a second trip to my show. He was on a few months ago. We ran out of time, and we're going to try to finish up Tuesday. That's at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And also, don't forget to visit my friends at World UFO Today. There's a link in the upper right-hand corner of my website to that. And check out the, holiday that they've come up with for UFO Day. Also, don't forget to look in the menu to the left and to go visit my other friends. And there's banners over here linked to them. You might want to ignore the alien UFO community because they've been shut down for a period of time. I'm not sure when they'll be back up. But Supernatural UFO and United Paranormal International are still up. And I'd pay them a visit. They're very good places to, read and learn and socialize. Also, if you go 2 links beneath the friends link, you'll see the radio favorites. These hosts are friends of mine. It's UKPN Radio with Gary Brown, JimHarold.com with Jim Harold, The Great Alien Report with Micah Hanks, and Ohio Exopolitics Radio with Mark Snyder. I recommend you give them a visit. And, they're great hosts. All but one of them's been on my show, and that's Mark Snyder. And we'll hope to see you guys again here Tuesday. Bring some friends with you. Tell them about my show. Let them know what you think about it. And don't forget, I couldn't have a show without my listeners any more than I could without my guests. If you do nothing but listen, you are participating, and I thank you for it. You have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys Tuesday.